Welcome to Alpha Wolf Trading. Do you know that there's over 12,000 stocks or companies that trade on the OTC? Between the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, you have over 7,000 companies. But us as retail investors, we wouldn't know that unless we were researching. Because why? Wall Street focuses on the elite, the big companies. And where the retail investor has their advantage is in small and micro-cap stocks. Why? Because you have the opportunity to speak directly with leadership. That is what this is all about here at Alpha Wolf Trading. We're trying to find the hidden gems, and we interview the executive teams of companies that we think meet the parameters to be those hidden gems. I also want to make sure you understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I collect no compensation for the interviews I do here. These companies that I interview have been identified as potential opportunities for me and the members of Alpha Wolf Trading to receive a higher than average return on our investment. These companies I have identified either because of a technical setup on a chart, a fundamental change within the organization, management team, new products, all kinds of different things that actually lead me here. But what do I think is the most important? Leadership. And that is why I do these interviews. I want to understand what drives the person that is leading the charge. I want to feel their passion. I want to understand their vision and the strategy that they're going to use to achieve success. That is what these interviews are for. I want to understand the share structure and the cap table, the size of the TAM, the total addressable market. This is the opportunity to learn all of those things. So sit back and enjoy. And if you learn anything from today's interview, do us a favor. Subscribe to the Alpha Wolf Trading YouTube channel. This is not to be considered as investment advice. I am not a financial advisor, and I encourage you to seek out a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. What's up, everybody? Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with a follow-up interview with Brian Ostroff from Arianne Phosphate, or Arianne, as Brian likes to say it. And he's the president of the company, not the CEO, just so we get that clear. And the ticker symbol is DRRS, as in Sam, F as in Frank. Brian, what's happening, man?
It's been a busy start to the year. It's been good, but just the 5 weeks has been a lot going on. And you know what? It's nice in that we're even getting some traction on the share price.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, you're always trying to, you're killing my big surprise. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Those who aren't watching the stock, and all, you're kind of like screwing it up for me, right?
It's an added benefit.
All right, so listen, you've actually had some really significant news coming out of Quebec, right?
Yeah.
And that is something critical about something, right?
Yeah, world's going to the dogs there, huh? So yeah, look, I guess about a month ago now, the Quebec government added apatite to its critical minerals list. Apatite, for your viewers that don't know, is the mineral that actually contains phosphate. So they've added phosphate to the critical minerals list, their critical mineral list. They've joined several.
What does that essentially mean? What is the critical minerals list? What does that mean?
Yeah, so these are minerals that the government believes are, as the name would suggest, critical. And critical in the sense of we need this for our society to continue to thrive. And so, look, Quebec's not alone in recognizing phosphate. Several other jurisdictions as well. most notably the EU. So phosphate is on their critical minerals list as well. Now, what I take from it is the point that we've talked about, but phosphate's important. First and foremost, it's important if you want to eat, and most of the world's not self-sufficient in phosphate, and without phosphate, you're going to have a pretty significant problem. And where those global deficits are made up from, the deficits being North America, South America, Western Europe, and a lot of Asia, are just parts of the world that are not overly stable. And so that would be the Middle East and North Africa, Russia, and when it comes to the actual phosphate fertilizer, China. So, you've got that, but now, as we've talked about, along comes the battery, the LFP battery. And phosphate is pretty key, but not just phosphate, right? Not the mundane stuff that you turn into fertilizer, but that's the purified phosphoric acid. So, not just any phosphate's going to work. Your ability to upgrade it all the way to PPA, and how much of your product you can actually turn into PPA is really regulated by the nature of your rock. So, here in Quebec, um, we have an igneous deposit that makes that high purity concentrate. Really, the only thing comparable to that is northern Russia. And so with that, and with this added demand and purified phosphoric acid, Quebec has made that decision. Quebec, I think through Arianne and maybe some early findings on some other deposits, I think sees itself as being in a place to take advantage of this. And again, it's a big recognition that this stuff's important, and where are we going to get it from? And Quebec, as I'm sure many of your viewers know, has really been at the forefront here of creating the battery ecosystem.
Right.
And phosphate they recognize as an important piece of that, and in Ariane, they can add that to their mix in the battery ecosystem.
So what I guess the thing that I was trying to get at is if they feel that it's a critical mineral, does that mean that they're gonna, like, we've got storage of oil, and we've got this strategic supply, right? So does that mean they keep a strategic amount of supply on hand? What does it break down to? Does that make?
Yeah, I don't think it would get to a level, certainly here in Quebec, where they would keep a store of phosphate. But I think what it does mean is recognizing that we need this stuff. It allows them to be even more supportive of projects
Well, and
that
stuff.
will allow the material to be produced. And in essence, they do have a store of it, in that it's going to be operating here in Quebec and be accessible, I guess, to friendlies that will require this stuff.
Got it. Okay. Um, I'm one that would believe that if it wasn't for the battery thing, phosphate, even though it is a critical mineral for food, I'm one that would think that if it wasn't for the batteries, though, they probably wouldn't have made this move, right? Because the battery, the phosphate that you're talking about, everybody talks about the car battery, but I think the more important battery is going to be the storage, and the phosphate battery is proving to be a better material for storage.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and something that often gets lost. Of course, the EVs are all the rage, and everyone, and what's Tesla doing, and what are all these companies going to be speccing as their battery. And so it gets a lot of attention and excitement. But really, to your point, the LFP battery chemistry, it's really ideal as well for energy storage. And so as more and more people look to, capture that electricity in other forms, so solar or wind or what have you, that's all fine and good. But once you've captured it, you need to store it, and the LFP is pretty much ideal for that. So, depending which consultancy groups that you look at their material, but there's certainly a bunch of them out there that believe that by the end of this decade, you'll have more LFPs in energy storage than you will even in transport. But, any way you slice it, I mean, there's a whole lot of demand coming.
All right. So, what else? What else we got cooking?
Well, I guess following up on that news with regards to Quebec, which is wonderful from a macro standpoint, and continues to make the argument of how important phosphate is. We put out news regarding our initiation, or that we have begun a pre-feasibility study on a PPA plant, purified phosphoric acid. So, following on to everything that we just discussed, at the end of the day, what you need for the battery is purified phosphoric acid, a high quality battery grade PPA. And many of the analysts out there benchmark, for example, they see a pretty significant shortage of PPA by the end of this decade, like north of 1 million tons. And that's a whole lot. And the question becomes, how are we going to get it? And, for everything we've talked about in the past, and here briefly, not just getting phosphate isn't necessarily going to get you the PPA. And there's a lot of dynamics at play here. First and foremost being the nature of the rock and your ability to turn it into PPA. So Arianne, because of the nature of our rock, we can be highly focused on making PPA, purified phosphoric acid, not be left with any residue for that has to get turned into fertilizer. And so we're definitely going to need a lot more PPA in this world. And Ariane's got the perfect rock to do that. So the idea of, yes, we'll have our mine, we'll be able to produce this high purity concentrate, but beyond that, the idea of putting together a project that will be able to take that phosphate concentrate and turn it into PPA and have that directed to the Western battery market is huge. Again, the nature of our rock, and it allows a downstream to be fully focused on that. We're going to need supply. Where's that supply going to come from? Beyond that, we need Western supply. We've seen all these projects and programs come into place, whether that's the Inflation Reduction Act or DPA, the Defense Production Act. Canada has instituted some programs, certainly Western Europe. And so we're going to need Western supply of PPA. In the West right now, there's not an overly meaningful amount. And what is being produced today, there's already customers for. In a lot of cases, it's actually food, because it's a similar type of PPA. And they're you're not going to go away from things like food preservatives and animal feeds. So you just plain need more. And today we don't have more. And Ariane sees this really unique opportunity to get in there and be a dominant player.
So the feasibility study, is it completed?
No, it's pre-fees. Yeah, look, the process of making PPA, it's a pretty basic chemical process. There are guys out there that do it, going to use a wet process. And so it's really just kind of getting some final ideas around the exact process. What kind of space are we going to need? Where would this be situated? The mine would ship this stuff, best way to ship it to where the facility would be set up. And then again, ultimately looking to integrate it into the Western battery market. So, I would anticipate being able to, in the next maybe 3 months, have a bunch of those answers.
So I guess there's a couple of things that come to my mind right off the bat with the critical news and the feasibility study. One thing I've always said about this particular situation is that you have a window of time that is shrinking every week. And anybody that I know, there's articles out there about weakening demand for electric vehicles, and Ford's not going to do this, and Ford's cutting back on this, and that's all fine and dandy. There's still tremendous growth within the space. So is it down, taking a breather? Yeah. Is it down for the count, not coming back? No. So that is not the case, right? So we can look at these little windows of time and make all these stupid predictions, but my prediction is it's not going away. Electric vehicles are here to stay, and so is eventually batteries. Storage, energy storage, that's not going to go away either. So we're on this path, and the window is shrinking. And as the window shrinks, that means there is a critical need for a product that you have a lot of in the ground. And I know you've danced with a lot of potential partners over the years, right? And you've been very some people might get pissed because you're not taking the first deal that comes your way, but you've been very diligent about not taking the first deal that comes your way and getting the best deal that you could possibly get for the stakeholders. And right, I mean, that's kind of where it's been.
Yeah, look, I agree with everything you've said. First, in terms of the macro and things wax and wane, and we're going to grow at 100%. No, we're only going to grow at 50% or whatever. We're going to grow, and like every new technology, there's going to be some growing pains. Look, I remember dial-up internet, right? And if my brother picked up the phone while I was using the modem, boom, I'd get knocked out, and but look at us today. And so I agree with you. Look, we are on the path of batteries and less fossil fuels. And so as much as, again, cars and transportation, and it gets all the news, energy storage doesn't get the news. That is growing. Look, it is not uncommon now for me to flip on the TV and see all these generators and alternative power sources that you need for your home, and you go and you Google, and if they're LFPs. And so we're going to need that. We absolutely, even very modest or pessimistic growth numbers, we need more PPA. Simple, done. And then, to your second point, look, Arianne has a very, very significant deposit. And as we've talked about, of course, it works nicely, very nicely in fertilizer, and would make sense for maybe guys in the fertilizer world. But now with things like PPA and these specialty applications, or again, even things like animal feeds, not just any phosphate's going to work. And so that really does shine a headlight on us. The fact that we're so advanced, the fact that we're permitted, the fact that we're 12 years into this and we've spent $100 million really has made us a leader. And so, yeah, your comment, we're not just looking for a deal. We are looking for a deal with the right group. We want to get this thing built. The right partner is someone that will help us build that. It'll also minimize the dilution and what have you for the stakeholders. And one begets the other, which is, if we get the right deal, we announce, in the future, our partner, and everyone sees that this project is actually going to get built. I mean, the re-rating that comes with that. So this is a great project and the dirt's in the ground. Show me that that dirt is coming out of the ground and I can get a product. I think that makes me all the more anxious to sit down and conclude and get my product and make sure I secure that PPA that I need.
Yeah. Okay. So now this was going to be the unveiling, but you kind of like screwed that up earlier. So it's not nearly as impactful as it was going to be.
No, you're highlighting the fact that but yes. Please show me your picture's worth 1,000 words. So
pictures are worth 1,000 words. So here's what's interesting about this chart. And I believe this happened right around the time when that announcement came out about the critical nature of the phosphate, right? So you had actually almost a picture perfect double bottom bounce. I mean, you had this move higher, then you came all the way back down. Notice that on that move higher, there was some pretty good volume over here. On this pullback, you can see that the volume tapered quite a bit. And then boom, you got another right almost to the penny, right? You got another pop off of this tested now bottom, which that's how you actually verify that it is a bottom, is you test it, right? Now, there's this other beautiful thing that's happening at the same time. And let me get my little. So the dominant trend to anybody that's give me that's looking at this chart, the dominant trend is pretty clear, right? It's from the upper left to the lower right. And let me look at this. Oh, come on. Doesn't want to give me this line. How about now? Actually. All right. For some reason, it's not working. So I'm not going to mess with it. But you can see it's going from the upper left to the lower right. What's beautiful about this, though, is that's the dominant trend. That's the longer term trend, right? Trend line. And that downward trend has definitively been broken. Okay. When you break the longer term trend, that is actually a pretty powerful thing, because you've got something that's in momentum, and it takes something that has greater force to break the trend that it's in, right? So that has happened. It actually took that trend line out, and that's now, what is it doing? It's pulling back, very similar to what it did over here. You had the nice pop, and then you had a pullback. You had a big pop. This, if you notice, the volume was massive on it. And you got all the way up to, this is not a fluke. You got up to this 32, 35 cent range where there's resistance, prior resistance, and you kissed it, and now you're pulling back. This is prototypical, this is what you want. You don't want a straight shot to the moon, even though that would be nice. You want a very controlled move up. You want a stair-step pattern, which is what appears to me to be in play right now. So now you've come back on low volume. You can see the volume is pulling back here, and you're testing this area where, again, not an accident, there is a definitive area of potential support here. So it was resistance, and now it is support. So this is a pretty exciting stuff, right? You certainly haven't, I don't feel, missed the move, right? I don't feel like this move is over. I think this is the beginning, right? So this could be the beginning of a new long-term trend, which is from the lower left to the upper right. And that may last for who knows how long, right? And if you look at the fundamental stuff that's going on, I don't know. It kind of looks like these things are starting to align, right? So I think on this pullback, this is a very attractive area to potentially, if you're in it, add, and if you're not in it, maybe to get involved. But I'm not telling anybody what to do, because that's not what I do. I don't tell people what to buy or what to sell. Just go ahead and paint the picture. But Arianne, look, I know that it's been a long time. It's been a long story. I know that, people are disappointed by certain developments, and nothing in life goes, at least in my life, nothing goes as planned, right? I mean, it always takes longer than you think it should take. But you know what? Sometimes longer is better. Patience is better, right? Because the right deal, the right circumstances. I mean, if you would have done a deal prior to it being named a critical mineral, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you wouldn't have got as sweet of a deal, right? So everything happens, I think, for a reason. I think that there is sometimes patience is, no, I know patience is a virtue, and it does pay to be patient. And I think this story has gotten better in a significant way in a few weeks' time. What happens next, right? What is the next thing that now that it's a critical mineral, maybe the guys that have been sitting on the sidelines eyeballing you start to feel like, holy shit, this could get a little heated in terms of there might be more players at the dance if we don't do something like soon, right?
Yes. Yeah, look, I think that it certainly continues to be very constructive. I think that a continued opportunity, let's say even for the share price, is more and more and more people understanding that phosphate too is a critical mineral, just like your lithiums and your cobalts. And it's interesting because this morning I was reading a pretty well-known investor publication, and it was talking and had this in-depth report, and it talked about all these various critical minerals, and based on what their demand was, or what they saw as growth, what kind of percentage increases in demand for lithium, graphite, cobalt, nickel, copper. And what was really interesting was phosphate was not there. And so on the one hand, some people could look at that and be disappointed. I look at that and saying, that's awesome. You know what, this is a good-sized publication. A lot of people read it. They haven't mentioned phosphate yet. I mean, if you're talking batteries, you're going to at some point talk phosphate. So I think that people who understand this here and now, the understanding of phosphate as a critical mineral is only going to grow and only going to grow. And unlike a lot of these other critical minerals, there are very, very, very few projects out there. So if you want to go secure your lithium or your nickel or what have you, then hey, you have choices. You want a Western supply of phosphate that's beyond what already exists, you don't have very many choices. So let people start to understand the macro, let them start to do a little bit of homework. It won't take them long to figure out Arianne. And I think that that's going to just continue to be a plus.
I agree. All right, Brian, look, I appreciate you coming in and taking your valuable time to give everybody an update. Is there anything you feel as though I missed?
No, look, people should kind of keep an eye. Don't fall asleep on us. Things are exciting.
Right. All right, Brian. Listen, if any new developments happen in the near future or whatever, we'll have you back and we'll do another update. Sound good?
Super. Thank you, Tim. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Today we had Brian Ostroff from Arianne Phosphate, ticker symbol DRRSF. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, make sure you smash the subscribe button. These things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Trading, and let us know whether or not providing this content is something we should continue doing. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.